Guys, working on this old Z425 again, and I've got to replace that muffler or do something with it. So I'm going to go through the steps of replacing the muffler. I may weld the muffler up. If I do, still same steps. First thing I got to do is get this shroud off, this engine shroud. There's 2 bolts, one down there, one right there. There should be 2 right there, but I've only got 1, so obviously this has been done before. And 2 right there. And this whole shroud should come off. They're all 13s. If you have an attachment point for the bagger, you got to take these 4 and those U-bolts off too. So guys, there's a heat shield that goes, just 1 screw right here that covers up this, and you can see how nasty it is. I got a pretty nasty oil leak coming out of this valve cover, I believe, which is pretty common, and you can fix that just with some, I think I'll probably take that valve cover off and fix it with some gasket maker. This thing has two of these. One of these is loose. I wedged a piece of metal up in there just to get it to shut up while I drove it over here because it was so loud, because it was just straight exhaust. Looks like I'm missing some bolts. That might be why this one side got loose. This thing's probably rattling a lot, so I got to figure out what bolts those are. And let me pressure wash all this grease off, and so we can really see what's going on. All right, now we're cleaned up. We can see a little bit. So you can see I also pulled the metal out. So you can see that both sides are loose, and it looks like that bolt may have pulled out. I'll have to remove that and see. Here's the thing, the muffler's not rusty. I mean, it's got a little bit of surface rust, but it doesn't have rust holes. It's a decent muffler. I think not having these screws in and that one maybe pulling out has caused it to loosen and knock out some of the baffles. I'm not worried about it being loud from a baffle standpoint. It's going to be a little bit louder, but it's not going to be ear piercing. So I think what I'll do is get it pulled up, see what screws need to go in here, but I also want it to be held up tight. If it's held up tight, it's not going to be loud. So I'll get some screws in here, maybe just put a tack here and a tack here, and maybe that'll solve it. All right guys, I was very wrong. This thing is rusty. The baffles are actually broken out and rusted. It's got water in it. Obviously that's a big problem. Bolts won't go in that. I guess a big screw bolt like that one will. I could probably weld a little plate right there and get 2 more bolts. These mufflers aren't expensive, but they're not cheap. They're, I don't know, 40 bucks. For a muffler, problem is you gotta wait on getting one, and we need to cut the grass. So I think I'll probably put this thing back on and then order one. But that's how you take a muffler off. You don't actually, the way these were made, you don't actually have to take the downpipes off of the cylinders. So guys, I do want to replace this muffler because of the issues that we talked about, but I got to get the grass cut today, so I'm going to reuse it for now. And instead of trying to get big tapping bolts to go through here, I just went ahead and nut serted it. I'm going to put some regular nuts in there. This one bridged a little bit of that gap. If you don't have a nut cert tool, which is what I use to put them in generally, you can just get you a piece of metal, bend it, put your hole through it with the right size bolt, and then just put that down there and screw it in. It's going to pull that right up and it's going to work just like a nut cert tool would. It's so easy, I wind up using this more than I use the nut cert tool. See if I can give you an example. And she's in. All right, so let's go reinstall that. So guys, here's a little tip. If you're working on your lawnmower, make sure that it is the hottest part of the day and you're right directly in the sun. It just makes things go real smooth. All right, so let's put this thing back in place. I guess I need to go find some washers. But you get the idea. I'll go ahead and do this and then I'll show you what it looks like after. I gotta line that last hole up. All right, so it's in, and it is much more sturdy than just having that random piece of metal shoved under it. I did find some lock washers for these two. I didn't find a lock washer for the size of that one, but I put some Loctite on it, so it should be fine. The vibrations would cause this to get a little loose, but those are fine threads, so I'm pretty comfortable with it. We'll button the little heat shields back up, and we'll be ready to cut. Got the heat shields replaced, and I replaced a little bit of hardware with some stainless. We'll see how that works out. Some gunked up hardware. Putting the engine cover back on now, just lining everything up. These will kind of flop, so you got to pick those up to line everything up. But once you get the bolts dropped in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2. I found the replacement bolt for this. So we should be back to square one. I haven't done the valve cover yet. I know, well, why are you putting it all together if you're gonna do the valve cover? I'm gonna do the valve cover after I make sure everything runs good and I get that tire and we're actually cutting grass. I'll come back and do the valve cover and the oil change. All right guys, it is running and it is a little loud. There's still that extra baffle that broke and it's still got that hole in the top. But it is, you know, you don't have to wear earmuffs or earplugs to drive it. That's as loud as it gets. That's full throttle. So it's fixed for now. So I get a new muffler in. Let's go cut some grass. We've got a couple acres worth to cut.